So the older you get, the more difficult it becomes to say the words, I was wrong. How do I know this? Because I'm super old. I was born in the 1970s. It's crazy. I've got fewer days ahead of me than behind. And to this day, I have a hard time saying the words, I was wrong. Well, I'm trying to teach the new generation a new way to admit that you were wrong about stuff. And we're going to start in the world of pro wrestling because that's what we talk about here at Wrestle Juice, pro wrestling. And I'll even begin things, all right? Before we dive into your I was wrong, I will say this. Roxanne Perez, I didn't see it. Early on when she was in the 2.0 or whatever they called that dog shit rebrand of NXT, I was like, I don't really get it. And then I saw her in the ring and I was like, oh, she can go in the ring. And then she turned bad and I was like, okay, this makes a lot more sense. And now she's doing great things on main roster. She has a super bright future. She's still really, really young. So I was wrong about Roxanne Perez. I think she's got a really bright future. Now that I've admitted that, it's time for you guys to admit that you were wrong. We'll start with this one. Lime Green Legend says the entire concept of pro wrestling as a whole. So what's the backstory here? I in my head when I read this, I'm like, wait, was this guy around in the 1910s, early 1920s before it went scripted and predetermined and whatnot? When the Gold Dust Trio got together and they're like, hey, you know what? These 3-hour best 2 out of 3 fall catch matches, they're just not cutting it. The electricity isn't there. The entertainment value isn't there. We got to fake these things up. And then Lime Green Legend was sitting around like, yeah, this is never going to work. These stories in pro wrestling, I want 5-hour catch matches. That's what I want. This entertainment, adding entertainment to pro wrestling is not going to work. What are you talking about? Pro wrestling, when you're growing up, are you like, this sucks, and then now you're into it? I'm really curious. Lime Green Legend, can you please add to the comments here? Are you 120 years old? What are we talking about here? I really want to know. Pro wrestling, you're like, I didn't think that was going to work. It's like, oh man, sound in movies? Oh, I didn't think that was going to work. And then people started talking in movies. It's crazy. This isn't 8, says Dom. Seemed like a bad idea in the beginning when he was with Ray. Boy, am I glad to be wrong. All right. I'm gonna say this because this is where I can take a little victory lap here immediately, 3 minutes into the episode. Back when Dom was a boring babyface dude who used to have his dad bizarrely ride on his shoulders to the ring. Remember that? I remember saying these words, and I had said this a couple times, I think. I'd have to dig through the old Going in Raws. I was like, listen, Dom Mysterio, if you send him down to NXT, put him in a faction, give him long hair, but he's not the head of a faction, and have him be shitty, that would get so over. I think this dude can pull it off. That little kid back then when Eddie Guerrero was trying to become his papi, I think that guy can make a killer heel. And they didn't do the NXT thing, but they had him grow his hair out and they had him be shitty. And now he's one of the most popular members of the roster. And he's still kind of a bad guy. He still gets really booed, but the crowd really loves him. And boy, oh boy, when they actually have him do something in story that's like a babyface turn, oh my God, he's going to be huge. I think that guy is on pace. Maybe. I know he's starting out maybe a little bit later than Eddie did, but to have an Eddie Guerrero level career in his life, I think there's big things ahead for Dom. And I will say this about this one. I'm glad that, what is this person's name? Oh, this is an 8. You might have been wrong about this, but Steve here, I was right on that one. You see how it works? I'm old, and when I'm right about something, I just go overboard with the victory lap. Jericho the Splendid says Sami Zayn being relegated to a celebrity match with Knoxville at WrestleMania turned out to be the most entertaining match on the card and lit the fire behind his bloodline run, in my opinion. Hard agree on this one. Especially the idea that nobody could have seen Sami Zayn's run with Johnny Knoxville being something that bizarrely worked so well and propelled him to the bloodline stuff. But that match was wildly hilarious. And I've always been a big Jackass fan. I never did see that last movie, but I've always been, I think because I know they're old too, and I think it would just make me hurt. But back in the day when we're all in our 20s and early 30s, man, watching those guys get all fucked up, that was amazing entertainment. I love those Jackass guys. And so like, I wasn't really sure what to think about the Knoxville stuff. I was like, this could be good because I really like Sammy and I like Knoxville, but you never know. You never know what's going to happen. They're going to do a celebrity match. And then they did it. And it was like, holy shit, this is wildly hilarious. They killed that match. That was such a goddamn good match. Boy, I love that one. Carpe Pesci says, I never saw either member of the Hardys or Edge and Christian as single stars. They did well as teams, but none of them seemed like they had it. Genuinely surprised that Jeff had the singles career that he did, but good for him. So I'll kind of like add on to this a little bit. I never saw anything in Christian. And I was actually, once him and Edge were doing like the 3-second pose stuff and they got away from Gangrel, I was like, okay, all right, I kind of see it. I think this could work. The one that really shocked me, the one that honest to God shocked the hell out of me was Matt Hardy. Because Jeff always had that mystique about him. Edge and Christian, they had like the comedic personality, and it's like you can go far on that in wrestling, as singles, guys tag, whatever. But Matt Hardy, I was like, he's just sort of like the not as interesting Hardy brother. What's this guy ever going to do? And the number of times he was able to reinvent himself. Kind of on the down low, one of the most creative wrestlers that we've ever seen, has been incredibly impressive and very surprising. So I personally was super wrong about Matt Hardy. Let me ask you guys this in the comments below. And I guess one half of these guys actually did have a really damn good solo career. I'm talking about, of course, Bully Ray, but it was in TNA, not in WWE. Why is it you think that Edge and Christian and the Hardys had such great solo careers in WWE, and they never saw that? They tried to split up the Dudleys, and I think they put them back together relatively quick, but they tried to give Devon that preacher gimmick, which was weird. And then Bubba Ray, I don't even think they did anything different with him. He was just sort of solo Dudley guy in WWE. And I'm kind of curious why y'all think that was. I mean, the answer is just Vince. It's just that's what Vince wanted, and that's what happened with Vince. But that was kind of interesting to me that like you have those three iconic tag teams and Bubba and Devon, tons of personality. You would have thought going back then, maybe the thought would have been, man, they've got a really good chance of being sort of on par with those other dudes in terms of singles careers, but it didn't happen. Along those same lines, Scottish Bisque says broken Matt Hardy. When he started the character, it did not work at all, but things really started to click with cinematic matches. Yeah, when I first saw like him show up as broken Matt Hardy, I was like, what the shit? What the TNA is this shit? What, like, this is horrible. This, like, he just looks really weird. And then you start to get a feel for what he's doing. It's like, oh my God, this guy, I forgot. This guy is one of the most creative guys I've seen in pro wrestling. And then he took it up several more notches with the Broken Universe. And again, it's one of those things where it's like, man, I know WWE got into it a little bit, but it's clear that they didn't want to go all the way with it. But yeah, man, I really like that Broken stuff. And always cracked me up when they brought back the Hardy Boys. It was supposed to be like, oh, it's the Hardy Boys of old. And then Matt would be sort of like on the download doing the delete stuff. And the fans would be like, oh yeah, delete. We know what you're doing. We know what you're doing. And then they had to cave in and actually do the Broken stuff. I really liked that. I thought that was great. AJ Daniels says kicking Edge out of the Judgment Day so early. God damn, has there ever been a faction with so much star power with such little charisma collectively as Edge with Judgment Day? Like, I remember there was supposed to be this spooky team, right? This like cult-like thing. And I guess behind the scenes, Vince wanted to make them like supernatural characters. And Edge was against that. But Edge's heel promos as this cult leader guy just resorted to like talking shit about sports teams of the local city that they're in. And I'm like, really? Is that what this character is about? Just running down sports? That's weird. In any event, they kicked him out. And I thought that actually improved both, obviously, the Judgment Day and Edge's character, because he got into that deal where he brought his wife in and they ended up concertoing her. I thought that was some really, really good stuff with the Judgment Day. And then, of course, they became, bizarrely, what we all kind of thought the Bloodline was going to be. They became just sort of the mainstay faction, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be any end to the Judgment Day, even though they constantly tease it I'd like to see the Judgment Day just continue on as like WWE's never. It's like kind of like Bullet Clubs, kind of like their Bullet Club. I kind of like that idea, and I think they're wildly entertaining now. They always find people with good chemistry for the Judgment Day. It's great. Eric Andrew says Logan Paul. I'll be honest. You never know really what to expect when a celebrity shows up in wrestling. Either you're like, oh, wow, that's kind of impressive. They're doing really cool shit. Or, oh, man, this person clearly is not suited for that. And yes, I was just referring to both Bad Bunny and Travis Scott. When Logan Paul showed up, it's like, all right, well, he's probably going to be around for a match and then we'll see. He is just part of the roster now. He's just part of the WWE roster now. It seems like that's a bigger deal than anything he does outside of wrestling. And it's gotten to the point where, yeah, I think the guy's probably just generally a turd, but whatever. I kind of don't hate to see him on my television anymore. I go through phases, I think, like anybody else, where some days I'm like, fuck that guy. Honestly, I think it's just like any exposure I have to him outside of wrestling puts me off wanting to watch him in wrestling. And I've been exposing myself less to what's going on social media. So I don't know, maybe he's out there kicking puppies or something and I'm just not aware of it. I don't know. In any event, yeah, Logan Paul is probably, I'm not even going to say probably, the best celebrity integration we've ever seen with pro wrestling. And I know some people out there have countered this in like one of the other videos by mentioning The Miz. I don't really count The Miz. I don't think he was a celebrity enough. I think he was using that Tough Enough stuff as a way to get to WWE, which is a higher platform. Logan Paul already had a massive platform before going to WWE. That's why apparently he's got his own locker room. He's got his own, dressing room. But I don't really count The Miz in that. I think Logan Paul, in terms of integrating into the roster, has absolutely done a job that has raised the standard to a new level. Son of the Pakistani belt maker says the Montreal Screwjob did work if you look at it in retrospect. I like that son of Pakistani belt makers out there watching this in November 97. They're sitting there stuffing their face with popcorn, watching the Montreal Screwjob go down Survivor Series, thinking, what a terrible storyline. This is never going to work. What kind of shit ass writing is this? This is not making any sense on what's going on here. And then, a couple weeks later, we got this bad guy Vince McMahon character. That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, did it work? I mean, it worked out for Vince. It worked out. You could say that. It worked out for not everybody. It worked out for Vince and the WWF. Did it work for Bret Hart? No, clearly not. I mean, eventually he got his United States title run in 2010 and his Hall of Fame and all that kind of stuff, and he made good with the company. But there was that long period of time then when things didn't seem to be working out great for Bret Hart. He always seemed really sad when he was in WCW, except when he was talking about El Dandy or Bill Goldberg. Anyways, that's going to do it for this edition of I Was Wrong. It makes me feel so good to hear all of you friendos admit that you were wrong about something. I think we've all grown a little bit today, not physically, because that's not how it works. Spiritually, mentally, emotionally, perhaps. Anyways, SummerSlam is tomorrow and Sunday, so be sure to join me and my buddy Larson, where we're going to be over at youtube.com/Stephen Larson and twitch.tv/Stephen Larson to watch SummerSlam live with y'all. And then we're going to be back over here for the hot takes. So be sure you're subbed to the channel and get the notify bell turned on so that, you get the thread notification when I ask for your guys' hot takes about the SummerSlams nights 1 and 2. We'll see you there.